What's up, everyone? My name is ZayNews, and this is episode 13 of the ZayNews Podcast, where we talk about all things basketball, whether it's the NBA, college hoops, youth sports, you name it. If it's about hoops, then we talk about it. And this time of year is so exciting for us basketball fans because the NBA playoffs are upon us. So today, it's all about giving my picks for the first round of the NBA playoffs to start tomorrow. If you like the content, make sure to like the content, leave a comment, share it with your friends. Leave comments. Let me know if you agree with what I'm saying or if what I'm saying, my takes are just absolute trash. All engagement is good engagement, and I want to make sure we're creating a community here and engaging with each other. So without further ado, episode 13 of the ZayNews Podcast, let's get started. Now, I really want to get into my first round picks, but I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't give my picks for the play-in games tonight, the final play-in games for the 8th seed on the East and West side. So we got the Atlanta Hawks versus the Miami Heat tonight. I want to go with the Hawks. I'd like to see Trae Young get back into the playoffs. All the stuff that happened with Miami this season was just kind of weird. And I think Trae Young, if his team doesn't face the injuries and trades that they faced, they're a lock in play-in seed or playoff seed most likely. So for that reason, I want to see the Hawks win. But with that being said, it's tough for me to bet against the Heat in a one playoff game. It's tough for me to bet against the Heat in one playoff game, and the reason being is because Eric Spoelstra just always comes so prepared, and they've created a culture in the Heat that can get their guys to really um, capitalize on single efforts or to really maximize their potential in a given game. And we've seen that over the past 5 to 6 years since they started with Jimmy Butler. They didn't make it to the finals every season, but each year it felt like they maximized their potential outside of, I think, 1 or 2 seasons where they lost in the first round, right? They're beating teams like Milwaukee in the first round, upsetting them. So whether or not they made it to the finals, the Eastern Conference Finals, or just beat teams that they weren't necessarily supposed to beat, their culture still embodies that. I think they've just had a weird season. So as much as I want to pick the Hawks to win, I think the Heat are probably going to find a way to get it done. It's tough for me to bet against Spoelstra. He's just such a good coach, and his teams always seem to come prepared to effectively execute. That's the word I was looking for. Effectively execute the game plan that he puts forward. So again, would like to see the Hawks win. I think they deserve it a little bit more, but I think Miami in one game I'd probably pick. And then we go over to Dallas versus the Grizzlies. Now, if this was the Grizzlies team of 2-3 months ago, that was like the 2 seed in the West, well, they wouldn't be in this position. But if they were even playing, similar to that team that we saw, right, and a team that was probably on pace to win more like 55 games as opposed to like 40, 48, I think is what they ended with in the regular season, then I would probably lean towards them. Ja, super dynamic. Dallas doesn't have a guard who necessarily can match him, but Memphis does have a big, to at least some extent, can play with AD, right? But with that being said, I really like Dallas. I really like how defensively minded they are. I really like their presence on the interior, right? Their front court depth is really good and really talented. And they've been having guys who've really stepped up to the moment. And guys like Klay Thompson, who had a great game in his last game. The kid coming off the bench, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. His name escapes me, but he's been scoring big points for them. So I honestly am going to pick Dallas. And one of the other reasons why I want to pick Dallas is because I think Dallas will make it a more interesting series versus OKC than Memphis will actually. Yeah, I think Dallas will make it a more interesting series. I think just because they have a unique roster makeup that not many teams in the NBA have currently, if that makes sense. So I think Dallas just poses unique challenges for OKC. It's not to say I think that they'll beat OKC by no means, but I think that they would probably challenge OKC a little bit more than Memphis would, and where Memphis is at right now. So I'm going to pick Dallas to win this game. I wouldn't be surprised if the Grizzlies win. I think it's going to be a very competitive game, but I'm picking Dallas solely on the fact that I think in a 1 versus 8 matchup, they'll pose some unique challenges, and they'll provide a little bit more competitive of a series to OKC than Memphis will. Could be wrong. Ja could go nuts in a series versus OKC, but they have a lot of guards who guard well, right? So he's going to be facing some difficult matchups. But then they got Bane. Bane's been hooping, so who knows? But that's just my thought process on the matter. Okay, but now that we got the playing games out of the way, let's get into the actual first round of the playoffs. So let's start off on the East, go through the East matchups, then we'll end with the West. So 1 versus 8 over in the East is looking like it's shaping up to be the Cavaliers versus who I picked, Miami. I'm saying 4, maybe 5 games. Yeah, 4, maybe 5 games. I think Cleveland has shown a level of discipline this season that most 60-win teams show, right? Because you got to come to work every day prepared and ready to go, and also a level of talent. So I think Miami and Spoelstra may be good enough to game plan and make it a gentleman sweep. But either way, regardless of what team makes it there, I think it's 5 games max, most likely a sweep. Then we go to Celtics versus Magic. I think the Magic, or rather, let's say, I think the Celtics are a terrible matchup for the Magic, right? The pace of play that the Celtics play with, the amount of threes that they shoot. Orlando's not a great three-point shooting team, and they play at a very slow pace. I think that's a recipe for a disaster for Orlando. Now, if this Orlando team didn't deal with the amount of injuries that they dealt with and their 2 best players this season both being gone for extended periods of time, I think they probably would have been a higher seed than the 7th seed. I probably think they would have been matched up with a team like the Knicks, and I think that would have been a better matchup for them. Still think they lose it, but I think it would have been a better matchup for them. So with that being said, I'm taking the Celtics in 4. I think the Celtics, and I want to leave a caveat there if the Celtics are healthy. So if they're not coming in too banged up, if everybody's ready to go, I pick the Celtics in 4. 5-game max again on that series as well. Knicks versus the Pistons. I like what the Pistons have done this season. I think you got to tip your hat to them. Their coaching staff, the way that their front office has been able to sign good vets to have around the young talent that they have there and make them a legitimate playoff team. With that being said, the Knicks can't lose in the first round, right? With all the money that they've invested into that team, them losing in the first round would probably be a cause to panic a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like you got max guys, you got like 3 max guys on that team. Well, I guess Jaylen Brunson didn't end up taking the max, but you get what I'm saying. They got a high ticket. You know what I'm saying? They're paying a lot of money for that roster. And I don't think they've necessarily played up to their potential this season. They've won 50 games, right? But they're just a super talented team. They haven't defended at the level that we thought that they could probably defend at, and it would be a disappointing season if they lost in the first round. It'd be a very disappointing season. I don't think there's any way around it. Now, if they make it to the second round and they lose to the Celtics or what have you, that's a different ball game. You lose to the defending champs. We can live with that. We can digest that. We can make some moves in the summer. We can come back better. I think if you lose in the first round to the Pistons, you really got to look yourself in the mirror, and probably another trade is happening this summer. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just, you know what it is. So I am picking the Knicks in 5 or 6. 5 or 6. I think, just with the inconsistencies in their defense this season, they're definitely going to lose a game. Whether or not they allow that to be a game or 2 remains to be seen. But I like the Knicks in this series. I think they have the veteran experience. I think they have the more talented roster, especially in their starting 5. And they should get this done in about 5 games. But again, with the inconsistencies in their defense, I wouldn't be surprised if they lose a game or 2. But I got the Knicks winning that one. And then last series to talk about on the East is the Pacers versus the Bucks. There was just news that Damian Lillard is going to play in this first round. He got cleared of his blood clots. Thank God. That's amazing news for him and just his overall health. but Damian Lillard will play. He won't play in game one. I don't think they're trying to rev him up. He may not play in game two, I believe. They're trying to, put him through a protocol to make sure that he's in shape and his body's, performing at the capacity it needs to before throwing him in the fire, which makes sense. This is an interesting series to me because Milwaukee has not had a great season. They've played good basketball since Damian Lillard has been out, and Giannis has had to really carry most of the load. But they have played under their potential for most of the season. And I don't think they have a great roster construction, but I really like Milwaukee. Giannis, one of my favorite players in the NBA. Dame, one of my favorite players in the NBA. I'd like to see them make a deep playoff run. Just seems like something there in their roster configuration just isn't working. And with that being said, them versus the Pacers have kind of kicked their butt over the past two seasons, right? They beat them in the playoffs, albeit Giannis and Dame were hurt in that playoff series. I don't think either of them played, two or three of those games apiece. You're going to lose that series. But, even in regular season play, you had Tyrese Halliburton hit that game winner on them. I believe it was versus Milwaukee. Maybe I'm tripping, but I thought it was versus Milwaukee hit that game winner on them of like a month or two ago. And it just seems like the Nuggets get up to play Milwaukee more than Milwaukee gets up to play. I said the Nuggets. It seems like the Pacers get up to play Milwaukee more than Milwaukee gets up to play the Pacers. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just seems like they have more energy about them. It seems like they feel like they're the underdog and they're out to prove something every time they play Milwaukee. And that shows in their performances. So, this is a heart pick. This is a biased pick. I'll be honest with you because I'm not confident in this pick. I'm confident in Giannis. He'll come out to play, and I'm confident if Dame is out on the court and he's able to play his normal game, then he will be very productive. But like when you just don't defend at a high level, the Pacers can really prey on that with their style of play, their pace, and all that sort of stuff. So, heart pick tells me Bucks. Let's take Bucks in 6. But to be honest with you, I would not be surprised if the Pacers pulled that one out. So that's what it is on the East. We'll see how that shakes out. But that's who I'm rocking with over there. Now, moving over to the West side of things, starting with the Thunder versus whoever wins tonight between the Grizzlies and the Mavericks. So I picked the Mavericks. I think they're going to win. I think either of these teams, whether it's the Grizzlies or the Mavericks, the West is so competitive, right? Between, the 8th seed and the, second seed, it was like a 4-game span. And that's with the Rockets playing out of their mind that last month, right? Before that, they were neck and neck with everybody else as well. So even though records and seeding is what it is, talent is not that far spread out. Now, the Grizzlies, they made some changes towards the end of the season. I'm not sure what their thought process was, but I think front office kind of punted on the season for whatever reason. But with that being said, and the Mavericks, they would have been a 45 to 50 win team too if they didn't deal with all their injuries. So I say all that to say, I think either of these teams will take at least a game off of OKC. I think OKC has been great this season, right? They had the best record in the NBA, 68 games. But with that being said, they're not just absurdly more talented than any of these teams in the West. I think what they are is they're youthful. I think they do have a lot of talent. I think they have great chemistry. I think the main things they have going for them, though, is that they're youthful and they have great chemistry, and that means a lot, in the midst of a long regular season, right? And I think that's what we saw come to fruition this year, and why they won so much at a high level. But with that being said, I think Mavericks and Grizzlies are more than capable of taking one game, and I think potentially 2 games, depending on how some things play out. So regardless of what team makes it, I don't think they're going to upset OKC by any means, but I think they do have the talent to take it to 5, potentially 6 games. Because when you think about it, AD in that series could be the best player on the floor for multiple games. You know what I'm saying? He could average 25, 10, and 5 blocks. You know what I'm saying? And he could be very effective and very much a pest to what OKC is trying to do. And then on the Grizzly side of things, if Ja's ankle isn't tweaked too bad, he can be the best player on the court for a given game. Desmond Bain can make 7 threes in a game. Jaren Jackson can have a very big effect on the defensive end of the floor and the offensive end of the floor, but a very big effect on the defensive end of the floor. So both of these teams have the talent to make OKC sweat a little bit, but ultimately OKC has been too dialed in. Their chemistry is too good. They have a lot of depth, even though I think their depth is going to shrink a little bit in the playoffs, and I think OKC is going to get that one done. So we'll take OKC, and I'm going to give the Grizzlies or the Mavericks, whoever wins, even though I picked the Mavericks, the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to tell them, and I'm going to bet on those two teams. I'm going to bet on them to lose in 6. So I'm going to give either one of those teams 2 games. I think they can do that. Next, Rockets versus Warriors. I talked about this yesterday on my TikTok, made a quick video, and I said the reason the Rockets don't get the credit that they deserve after the season they had, especially after the season they had last year into this year, is not because of experience. I don't think. I think people say it's experience, but in reality, they have an experienced roster for the most part. They have about it just as an experienced of a roster as OKC does. You know what I'm saying? They have Fred VanVleet, who's won a championship. They have Green, who's been in multiple deep playoff runs. They have Steven Adams. They have guys and vets who have made deep playoff runs. Even Dylan Brooks has been in playoffs and knows what that is like. So I don't necessarily think it's inexperience that people call to, even though that's what most people allude to. I think what it is and why there's so much reservation when you look at the Rockets is because literally when you go down, and if you were to match them up against any of these teams 1 through 10, right, 1 through the 2 teams who were at the bottom of the play-in, you could make a legitimate argument that they do not have the best player in any of those series. Now, granted, I think they would have kicked Sacramento's butt if they made it to a series with Sacramento. I think Sacramento was probably the worst team in the play-in. Well, clearly they lost in the first game, so the worst team in the play-in. But with that being said, you could have a legitimate argument between who's better between Jalen Green and Zach LaVine. You know what I'm saying? And I think a lot of people, I think myself included, would probably lean Zach LaVine with how long he's been good and some of the things that he's done in the NBA, even though he hasn't always been on winning teams. So when you look at that, right, that matters, especially when you're a defensive team, knowing that a lot of these games are going to come down to the stretch, that you don't have the best player or the best closer in any of these series, right? So if you match up against the Warriors and you're at a 5-point game with 2 minutes left, who are you choosing more times than not? I'm probably going to say the Warriors. You know what I'm saying? And then you match them up against the Clippers. You got James Harden, Kawhi, the Nuggets, Joker, the Thunder, Shea, the Timberwolves, Ant-Man. You know what I'm saying? The Warriors arguably have 2 players better than their best player in Jimmy and Steph. So I think that's the piece that gets missed when we talk about the Rockets and why there's so much reservation in picking them. But with that being said, they are dogs. I want to make this very clear. They are dogs. They get after it. They have a intensity about them that is real, and I think they could give a lot of problems to a lot of different teams. The thing about them versus the Warriors that's interesting is that Jimmy and Steph, I think, have to play at a very elite level in order for them to win games, especially as they get deeper and deeper into the playoffs. I think they can do that versus the Rockets, so I'm picking the Warriors to win this series. I think this series will go at least 6 games, but I trust Jimmy and Steph. I don't think they'll have great games every game when you're going up against a defense like that, but I think they can have 4 great games. You know what I'm saying? In a series of 7, I think they can have 4 great games, and I can think that they can get that job done. Can you continuously do that as you get deeper and deeper into the playoffs? That was the question for the Warriors. So I picked the Warriors in that series ever so slightly. I think that series most likely goes 7 games unless, one of these teams just has the other figured out. And I think the Warriors are too experienced to get figured out that way without making adjustments. So I don't necessarily foresee it being a short series on either side, but I got the Warriors in a long series, 6 or 7 games. Lakers versus Timberwolves. I think the Timberwolves have a talented enough roster to make this a very interesting series, but I think there's a lot of other things that may play against them. I think their star player is still he's still kind of limited in the ways that he can beat you, right? He has to be very electric scoring the ball typically. He's still not a great playmaker. And also, outside of him, you don't have a ton of great shot makers, right? Julius Randle has kind of shown a habit of his play dipping during the playoffs. And honestly, if I had to pick someone who was going to be the most important player in the series for the Timberwolves, I think it'd be Julius Randle. They need a consistent second shot creator, whether he's assisting the ball because he is a good playmaker, or scoring the ball. And I don't know what that's going to look like. And I think the Lakers are going to have very good game plans to kind of take the Timberwolves out of what they want to do. So I think this is going to be a competitive series just because how hard Anthony Edwards and that team can compete at times. But I think it's going to be a short competitive series. So I think this series probably goes 5 games, and all of the games are pretty competitive. You know what I'm saying? I think all the games are pretty close. I think the Lakers know how important rest is going to be to these guys, especially an aging LeBron. And I think they're going to really try hard to capitalize when opportunity presents itself. And I think they're going to come in, they made sure to lock in that playoff seeding, so they've had a lot of time to rest. And I think they're going to make sure that they come in very prepared for this series. So 5 games, I could see it going 6. I don't really see it going past 6 games, to be honest with you, but I would take the Lakers in this series over the Timberwolves for those reasons. And I do want to say something. As much as people say that Luka is just about to destroy Gobert, Luka is great out of the pick and roll, and he definitely is going to kill anybody who he wants to, right? Whatever switch he deems the switch that he wants to get. But with that being said, Gobert is not the puppet that we make him out to be in pick and rolls and on islands. It's really not. And when you look at the stats, when he gets switched on to guys, like the percentages don't speak to him just being a tomato can on the perimeter. So I know he gets a bad rap, and I do think at times it's warranted. I think his limitations on offense have caused more harm to his teams than his defense. I think his defense has, funny enough, become underrated for a guy who's won Defensive Player of the Year like 3 times. So I don't expect Gobert to be someone who gets like played off the court the entire series. I think he will play, and I think he will play well. And if he does play really well, then he could be an X factor that takes the series a little bit longer than we might think, especially with the Lakers having small lineups. But that being said, still got the Lakers. I don't necessarily trust Julius Randle to have a monstrous series against us. And also, I think Anthony Edwards is going to have to average like 35 to 40 to make this to give them a shot at winning. If I'm being 100% honest with you guys. So Lakers all day, baby. We're taking the Lakers. And last but not least, the Nuggets versus the Clippers. This is the most intriguing series. This is the series that I think has potential to go either way. I really don't know. I think there's a few things that this series is really going to depend on. One being Kawhi Leonard's ability to have sustained levels of excellence throughout the series. If he can play at like his even 95% of his peak, you guys may think I'm crazy, but like he at his peak is just about as impactful of a player as Joker is. Now, a lot of people are going to point to stats and tell me that I'm wrong. And healthy Kawhi Leonard is legitimately, to me, a top 20 player all time. Now, accolades, longevity, all the stuff plays into where you rank guys all time. A healthy Kawhi Leonard, when he is healthy, in that vacuum, the Toronto series, before he got his ankle taken out in that Warrior series while he was still on San Antonio, right? These moments where he's been able to be at his peak and healthy, he is one of the most impactful players ever to play the game, and he's one of the best players to ever play the game. So Kawhi Leonard healthy is like a top 20 talent all time to me. That's not just, me just saying stuff for a wow factor. I really believe that. And I say that to say he can have just as much of an impact on a game as Joker can. Now it looks different, right? It's more him scoring. It's more him defending, playing his role, being a two-way guy, and shooting very efficiently from the field. But he can have a huge impact on a game and really put his handprint on the game. So if they get that Kawhi with the way the Clippers have been playing, I think the Clippers will win. If for whatever reason you don't, or if for whatever reason James Harden regresses quite a bit in the playoffs, then I think Joker will be able to manage. But Joker's going to have his hands full, right? Like they have a center who he's going to have to bang with and really work. Obviously, it's Joker. We know who's winning that matchup. But it's going to be an easy series. And also, you got a guy like Jamal Murray coming off injury, and you have one of the best perimeter defenders in Chris Dunn, who's going to be there. You know what I'm saying? Like Chris Dunn ain't no joke, and I love the way he's made a career for himself in the NBA after I think he got washed out of the league at one point after coming out of college. So that's a fun series. That's a series that I'm very excited about, and I think healthy Kawhi, Clippers take it. Not just healthy Kawhi, but Kawhi and the Clippers sustain the level of play that they've been playing at the past like month and a half. I think Clippers take it. If for whatever reason something happens, I think Joker will be able to capitalize and show why he's the best player in the NBA. So picking the Clippers, but by no means would be surprised if the Nuggets won. I think that's a 7-game series either way it goes. Okay, didn't want to go too long this one. Just wanted to touch on all these matchups. Very excited for the playoffs. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know where my picks are wrong. Let me know where my picks are right. And let's discuss. Let's see. I'm very excited for tomorrow. I'm very excited for tonight just to see how the play-ins wrap up. And we will have another episode next week talking about these first couple games of the playoffs and where everybody's sitting at. Have a good one, guys. Peace. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend. Peace.